Hi everyone and welcome to week 2. If you're watching this lecture, then it means you survived week 1, so good job. We just have a few more weeks left. I like to begin each week of lectures by going over any upcoming assignments so you have the information on those and we're all on the same page. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that after I do a couple little housekeeping announcements and reminders. First, just note again, for the probably fifth or sixth time that late assignments are reduced by 1 letter grade and must be submitted no later than 1 week past the due date. This was definitely the demise of many students in 516 prior, so don't let those deadlines get past you. Definitely pay attention and plan accordingly to meet all of the deadlines, because discussion posts and any small group activities will not be accepted late. And that's policy within the department for online courses. Also, if for some reason you do need to drop the course, the last day to do so without a W is September 11th. And then another reminder that the fieldwork requirement is due September 14th. A lot of people have already submitted that, so kudos to you. Thanks for being on top of that. I wanted to take the time to share some resources available to you through the department. First, we have a writing tutor, Maureen, who's wonderful. She can help you with a variety of things, and I suggest you take advantage of that if writing isn't your strong suit and you'd like her to proofread something for you, help you with APA or formatting or punctuation, grammar, whatever you need. There's her email, and I also put her flyer on our course Titanium site. Another awesome resource is our tech specialist, Lindsay Rutherford. I put her flyer on Titanium as well. She is a tech guru who's been through the online program. She's actually in my 514 class I did a few semesters back, but she can help you with Titanium, VoiceThread, Screencast-O-Matic, Google Docs, Wikis, and her email is there. You can also call or text her on her cell phone. You may need to employ her services when we start posting videos and doing more with text, so please make a note of that resource. Feedback on discussion posts. I've already scored the first 5 or so that were up there and left you some comments and some feedback so you knew how you did. Overall, really well done so far. I'm very impressed. I think this is the most impressed I've been with discussions since I've been teaching this class, so keep up the great work. Do make sure you answer all parts of the prompt and really think about quality versus quantity. You don't need to write a lot if you're addressing all pieces there. Make sure you support opinions, you're integrating the comments of others, and double check for grammar and spelling, and you should be good to go and get your 10 points. That's all there is to it. So keep up the good work. Those look great so far. Week 2 readings, there are a few of those, so let me quickly tell you what you're reading. First of all, in your core Assessing Multiple Measures book, we're going to read the introductory section, pages 5 through 15. It's a good overview of where to start when you're assessing students of different ages, and it also goes over the 4 different types of assessment when you're putting together an intervention program. Very helpful. Then in Lipson and Wixon, Chapter 10. Quick note on Lipson and Wixon. The syllabus is based on the 4th edition of that textbook. However, they recently published the 5th edition. The bookstore was selling the 4th edition, but now switched to the 5th edition. So the syllabus is reflective of the pages in the 4th edition. If you do not have that edition, you may need to adjust what you're reading. This week it's pretty easy because it is chapter 10, which is the assessment on the chapter on formal assessment. So please kind of skim but also read through the chapter on formal assessment and pay attention to the tools they suggest for formal assessment. You can also find a cheap used copy of the 4th edition on Amazon. I recommend doing that. I am having the 5th edition shipped to me from the department, so hopefully soon I can convert those page numbers for you so it will be less confusing. I don't recommend getting any of the online or digital texts since you will be using Lipson and Wixon again in 581, and then the QRI and the core you will actually be needing to photocopy and use the assessments with. All right, so that's my note on text. There's also a glossary of assessment terms that you'll want to be comfortable using, so that is there. And then I have the RTI article for you, which is about early screening for risk of reading disabilities, and it comes from the journal Assessment for Effective Intervention. That's a pretty good read, especially when you're thinking about setting up an intervention program. You want to start with screening and what tools you're going to use to identify the students in need of intervention. So I thought that was a good place to start with RTI, and it also corresponds to lecture and topics for this week. So those are your readings. Participation activity, same thing as last week, just a discussion forum on our Course Titanium site where you need to think about the role of formal assessment in the assessment process. What is a benefit of formal assessment? What is a limitation or challenge of formal assessment? And then how do the IRA standards for assessment apply to formal assessment? So there are 4 pieces to the prompt this week. Definitely address all of those and do all of those things, and you should get your 10 points. All right, a note on the fieldwork requirement. I want to make sure everyone is clear on that. There is a practicum policy, and all of the forms are back in week 1. I know some of you have already looked through and submitted those. In order to begin working with your student week 4, you will need to either post online in week 3. I put the link where you need to submit it since it's going to be due as one of your week 3 assignments. So you can either submit it through that link or you can email it to me at any time, and that is due by September 14th. Now you have 2 options. If you have a teaching certification or have live scan fingerprint information, that's what you would submit, one or the other of those, plus the parent permission form. So everybody needs to submit a parent permission form. If you do have a teaching certificate, you can send me that plus the normal parent permission form. If you do not have the teaching certification or the live scan fingerprint, then there is a separate permission form that is for non-credentialed clinicians. So that might be the easier option altogether because then you just have to submit that one permission form, but on the top it very clearly indicates it is for a non-credentialed, non-fingerprinted person, versus if you do have your certificate and you do have your fingerprints, you're going to submit the other parent permission form. And yes, I do need a parent permission form for all students being worked with, even if it is your own. So the assignments due this week, you're just doing the participation activity, the discussion forum, and getting me that fieldwork requirement, which is due September 14th, and you will want to find a student grade level kindergarten through 3rd grade. All right, that brings me into the first part of our content for week 2. We're talking about a potpourri of topics. We have an overview of assessment, some assessment terms, formal assessment, response to intervention, a lot of key topics there. These are our objectives for this week. Number 1, to be able to evaluate assessments against the IRA standards, which you should have read last week, and you actually already started discussing them in your post from last week when you discussed what assessment is and the purpose of it, and did a really nice job of bringing in that reading. We also want to, number 2, explain a process for authentic assessment. So that came from your reading teacher article from last week. Explain characteristics of formal assessments. You'll be doing that in your discussion post this week. And then start to develop our understanding of the RTI, or response to intervention framework, and how assessments are used in RTI to support screening and other areas. So those are our goals. Before we get going on those, I thought you might want to know who your colleagues are this semester in our online Read 516. So as you know, last week you needed to create your profile and put up your picture and tell us a little bit about yourself. So I have compiled some information as to who we are. So we have in this course 3-year veteran teachers, 6-year veteran teachers, lower elementary teachers, upper elementary teachers, grade 4, middle school teachers, special education teachers, public school teachers, private school teachers, teachers from Title I schools, a few of you actually, a substitute teacher, a reading intervention teacher, a former school librarian turned teacher, a grade 1 teacher who is actually at an Australian international school in the United Arab Emirates. We have a writing tutor for a community college, an English teacher for another community college, and 2 stay-at-home moms. So there are a lot of different experiences and areas of expertise in the course, so I'm excited for you to learn from each other and grow in the area of assessment and diagnostic prescriptive teaching. Oh, we've got one more. Sorry about that weird animation. We have a certificated learning and achievement specialist for Santa Ana Unified School District. So that's who we are. Let me tell you a little bit about the interests. Pretty interesting group, very diverse, lots of different and varied interests. I was pretty surprised. I think this is the most variety I've had so far. We have people who like to play the piano, karaoke, beading, jewelry making is another interest, crafting. 2 people are very into gardening, even maintaining their own organic gardens. Some people interested in board game nights, someone who likes to write screenplays, event planning, 4 people into cooking and baking, eating, sleeping was listed, 3 people traveling, hiking and camping was stated twice in interest, sports were an interest. This is the most I've ever had for yoga, 3 people with that. CrossFit had 4. That was the most I'd ever seen for CrossFit. I know that's kind of a new craze. And then being a mom was also a popular interest. 2 people have 2 boys. 2 people have 3 boys, and someone else has 4 kids. They didn't tell me the genders on those ones. And then the most popular response, which seems to be a pattern every semester, was reading. So collectively, reading was the most popular response. As you can see, there is a variety of interest amongst the group. All right, last week we briefly investigated some of the disparities in definitions of assessment. Is assessment really used to hold people accountable, or is it used to improve teaching or learning? So we kind of talked about that briefly. We reviewed some key terms related to assessment that you probably saw in 508, and we also considered the purpose of assessment as related to your own teacher beliefs, which you discussed in our forum. Here's a quote for you if you don't, and it comes from your Lipson and Wixon text, page 3, and it says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, but those who teach without theories may follow the road that leads nowhere. In reality, all teachers have some sort of theory, and this just reiterates the fact that even though we may think we are a neutral party, we espouse specific beliefs and values as teachers that ultimately impact the decisions we make. So our assessment choices make very powerful controlling statements to our students, to our parents and families we work with. If you are only emphasizing one area of reading and you're only assessing fluency, then the implication of that is you're teaching students that that's the most important part of reading, which isn't necessarily the case. So I just want to draw your attention to the fact that we all have these beliefs and values that underlie all of the decisions we make in the classroom, and there are actually very large implications for those decisions. All right, I'm going to stop there, upload this, and I'll join you back with what is assessment